Before we dive in, there's plenty of important background information I need to discuss. Star Fox Assault released on February 14th, 2005 for the Nintendo GameCube. The game was published by Nintendo but developed by Namco only 7 months before the company merged with Bandai to form Bandai Namco. Not only was Bandai going through a transitional phase, but Nintendo was well into the development of the Nintendo Revolution. This entry in the Star Fox series released at a poor time for both companies, but the story of Assault's development is only a little short of tragic. The game began development in 2001 and was officially announced in May of 2002. A release was scheduled for 2003, but it wasn't ready for release. Assault was shown in the form of a brief trailer for E3 of 2003, to one of the most disastrous crowd reactions in the Expo's history. EGM reported on the showing, citing the reveal as remarkably unimpressive, and the crowd booed as the trailer played. This discouraged the developers from continuing the project and delayed further development. To inject some personal remarks, I think this trailer is an abomination. Fox's voice and the general tone is a massive stain that shows the direction of aiming towards a younger audience? I mean, can we pause for a second here? This trailer is atrocious!
Star Fox is back! Fast and furious gunfighting action! Chase your opponents down using the R-Wing or Landmaster!
What the heck was that? The disastrous response from the crowd and critics put pressure on the development team, and in turn, they decided to take a completely different direction, which we'll explore later in this review. With a history as disastrous as this, I can only describe the final product as one thing and one thing alone: a leap of faith. Star Fox Assault received mixed to positive reviews upon release, and has garnered a strong cult following. Outside of this following consists a very displeased group of Star Fox fans and gamers who cite Assault as the downfall of the series. Critics took the middle ground, with many such as GameSpot and IGN finding the game a solid one but lacked innovation for the Star Fox series. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is a varied amount of reception here. It's not hard to see that Assault had a rocky life. Well, I'm still not going to be easy on the game because of arbitrary reasoning. So let's dive in, starting with the story, because there's a lot to analyze this time around. I know, you wouldn't expect that much complexity from the plot of a Star Fox game. Well, let's see if it's any good. The story begins with a classic space battle between the Cornerian army and Andross. This was the best way to tie Assault back to Star Fox 64 without making Andross's defeat feel meaningless. There's simply a surplus supply of henchmen left over after Andross's defeat, and I see no issue with this at all. Heck, many other games have done this as well. It's pretty much a trope at this point. Look no further than Platinum Games' The Wonderful 101 and Bayonetta. Well anyways, Team Star Fox arrives and is excited to assist, except Falco. God, I love his expression here. Immediately following this brief cutscene is that of the briefing-styled cutscenes, which offer a very stern and formal presentation to receiving orders, and I believe it goes without saying that this is a quality addition. Long gone are the stoic briefings from Star Fox 64, and instead we have full-body movement, and yada yada, I'm getting ahead of myself. More on the briefing presentation in the presentation segment of this video. General Pepper informs, "Holy smokes! Time has not been kind to this guy." Nintendo has always garnered a stigma of being very careful with designing their characters to look appealing and free of undesirable traits visually, and I think that stigma is absolutely true, at least for the most part. Even villains like Ganondorf have very appealing designs, wouldn't you agree? I'm sensing a different direction for this game and its story. I mean, General Pepper he looks like he could just die any minute. And I know that's rather grim, but I'm beyond impressed with this decision. Anyways, General Pepper informs Team Star Fox that the leader of the attacks is none other than Andrew Oikony, member of Starwolf. Many have found themselves confused to hear Andrew is being now addressed by Oikony in Assault. Andrew Oikony is his full name, and addressing someone by their last name is considered formal and respectful. This displays the more serious tone of the game right here. Team Star Fox is by all means ready to put an end to Oikony's plans if Pepper demands, and he does. But I appreciate how the writers tapped into the respect of war from both sides of the battle. You have to respect the opponent. All of the members proceed to the docking station and take off. Oh god, I'm seeing signs of Kevin Monroe! Let's move on. Wait a second. There are two important changes to Team Star Fox I haven't addressed yet. Crystal Vixen, debuting in Star Fox Adventures, has combined her telepathic abilities with piloting. Basically, Crystal is now a part of Star Fox, and despite conceived notions that she has no experience with piloting or flying an R-Wing for that matter, she does just fine in the game. Perhaps many players won't buy this change for the character, but an easy explanation could be that Crystal was trained between games. Moving on, Peppy has retired. However, we don't need to be told that Peppy is taking an advisory role. That would be rather simplistic and forced. Rather, the cinematography does the talking. As soon as Fox, Falco, Slippy, and Crystal enter their R-Wings, look at how this shot of Peppy is composed. Excellent work. I apologize if I keep halting the plot along, but this is a review after all and not a summary. After a battle through a collection of spacecraft armadas, the team finds Oikony, but he flees to the local planet with Fox and company chasing him. I would praise this plot point for destroying expectations, but really, Oikony's flee isn't nearly as exciting as it could have been. After entering Fortuna's atmosphere and blowing stuff up, Fox takes on Oikony directly. Gosh, this story is pretty by the numbers, ladies and gentlemen, if I have to be honest. If only something exciting would happen.
Is that all you fools have got? I am the one and only true heir to the great Emperor Andron! The new Emperor! Andrew Oikony! Uncle Andron!
What? Reinforcements?
That doesn't look friendly.
Such strange thought patterns.
No, it can't be.
Abaroid, Abaroid, Abaroid.
Aperoid?
There's no time to hesitate. Return fire.
Oikony shot down. But not just shot down, Andrew Oikony was murdered. What? That is unbelievable. I know what you're thinking. In Star Fox 64, we took out Starwolf, but they always come back, blah blah blah. Guess what, fellas? Oikony doesn't come back. Well, we'll cross that bridge specifically when I eventually review Star Fox Command, but my point is, the murder of Andrew Oikony is the start of this war. Yes, I said the W word again. In 1914, we all know that the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, Franz Ferdinand, was assassinated, which caused the two allied coalitions to start the war known as World War I. Ladies and gentlemen, I see many parallels here in Star Fox Assault. One assassination starts it all, and in that case, the coalitions include Team Star Fox, the Cornerian Army, and potentially Star Wolf. And above all else, the war against these new alien creatures, the Aperoids, has begun. After taking out the Aperoid, Fox picks up a strange piece of core memory. Assault's plot wastes no time and quickly moves on to the next briefing, where General Pepper delivers some tragic news. And with that, we meet the head of the research department, Beltino Toad, father of Slippy. And if you thought this war was going to be easy, hear Beltino's hesitation when delivering information on the Aperoids.
We were somehow able to survive that trial, but that was just a taste of what's coming.
Classic space opera trope known as the distress signal comes from Planet Katina, and that is our new concern. A massive, I repeat, massive Aperoid makes itself known, and Fox has to destroy it and retrieve the core memory. See, earlier Beltino stated that the small core memory Fox had found on Fortuna was not enough for conducting solid research on the Aperoids. By the completion of the second mission, the player is put in a position of feeling eagerness, most likely, and that comes from the fact that the player has been waiting for a strategy to combat the Aperoids for a while now. Of course, this is contingent on the player being engaged with the story, but jumping the gun here, Assault's story is quite excellent. If you've seen my analysis of Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations, you'll know that I'm a big fan of, quote, destroying expectations to give people something they didn't know they wanted, and that is a line ripped right from that script. My reminder with that is to note that doing this does not automatically make the twist good, but I'll explain why I think this twist is a good one in just a moment. After destroying the massive Aperoid, Fox is instructed by Peppy to retrieve the core memory, but the distress signal rears its very, very ugly head. And what do I mean by that? Pigma. Not only does Pigma come out of nowhere, but it seems he's aging just as much as General Pepper. And what's with that disgusting voice?
Careful, we don't know anything about what we're up against.
I know that. Hey, it looks like that distress signal's no longer transmitting.
That doesn't sound good.
Hey, thanks for helping me out.
Pigma!
Long time no see, Fox.
The SOS signal. It was you?
This is I'm here. I'll just help myself to this.
No, that's...
Is it that important? Then I'm gonna be rich.
Back to what I was saying earlier, this is a solid example of a plot twist, and for a great reason. A player of Star Fox 64 can easily tell you what's wrong with the scene. Or rather, what's inconsistent. It's very surprising to see Pigma not reference Starwolf at all, as he has the personal goal of getting rich off of the core memory. It made quite a lot of sense for Andrew Oikini not to reference Starwolf because he was focused on avenging his father. Anyways, it's time for the briefing on the next mission. Peppy tracked the location of Pigma, the Sargasso Space Zone. In a bit of a twist, one of Starwolf's henchmen gets on call, and...
This is the Star Fox team. We're here for a hog named Pigma. We don't want trouble.
We don't know about no Pigma or any other fool. And now we know you're Star Fox, you ain't going nowhere.
This is confirmation that Pigma has been removed from Team Starwolf, but I can't help but notice something else. This guy doesn't even know who Pigma is, although it's possible he's lying to Fox because Fox gave away his voice, but... Slippy desperately wants the team to retrieve the core memory more than ever, as it's been discovered that the research department could use it to find the location of the Aperoid homeworld. Now for the mission. Falco and Crystal will destroy the forces outside the Sargasso station, while Fox and Slippy destroy all of the transfer gateways on the inside. These gateways are enemy spawners. Fox and Slippy take them out, however the mission is only a partial success as Starwolf appears. When asked by Fox, Wolf claims he doesn't know anything about what Pigma has been up to, and never wants to see his ugly face again. Otherwise, he'd kill him. Fox barely defeats Wolf, Leon, and Panther, but thankfully does so. Now what's interesting is that there's actually a bit of a subplot that begins here. Introducing a new character to the series, Panther Caroso. Panther flirts with Crystal, and I like seeing Falco get very argumentative with him in this scene. But because Panther will do anything for Crystal, he gives away Pigma's location, Ficina. Next briefing. Now this demonstrates excellent writing. There's a new problem. Ficina's generator, particularly the Climate Control Center, needs to be fixed, and Pigma's location has been sadly lost. However, the weather is so bad that Slippy, Falco, and Crystal cannot fly their R-Wings. Fox actually has to go by himself, on foot, in this weather. Goodness gracious. Fox makes it inside, and you just have to see this, folks.
This should be it.
Control settings confirmed. Beginning adjustments.
Woohoo! That's the end of the blizzard!
You did it, Fox! Fox?
What's wrong, Fox? Come in!
Quit yelling, Falco. I'm fine. Just a little hitch in the plan. There must have been an ID problem. The sentry bots have taken a liking to me.
That must have been Pigma's work. I'm on my way. Hold on!
Yeah. Could you hurry?
You might be asking, what is so compelling about this plot so far? It seems so generic. Well, I've analyzed quite a bit of it and have given lots of positive, but in case you haven't digested all of it or weren't convinced, here's another point. This setback is another excellent example of writing the villain. Pigma is not present in the slightest, but we are given more of a reason to hate him. It's very well done. Falco arrives once the control center has been optimized, and what follows is a very interesting gameplay segment. However, I'll be saving that for the gameplay section of the video. Then, surprise! Pigma appears and seems to be controlling the Aperoids. He gets away, but only because a larger threat made itself present. Now, from a writing standpoint, I'm going to declare this right now, that if Pigma gets away one more time, I'm docking points. But as it stands now, the implementation of Pigma's appearances have been fair. The Aperoid is defeated, with Falco being taken back by the corruptive power the Aperoids had over the machines. As I've described before, this is a war that the protagonists are desperately trying to win, for the benefit of the entire universe. I only see Falco's remarks as a sign of what's to come, and the player should as well. Pigma also deserves some extra attention from the player. I mean, think about it. With how he set us back in mission number 4, he potentially prevented Team Star Fox with the time needed to defeat the Aperoids. Wasting time away. Fox ponders about Wolf's character and what he views of Wolf. This is also the start of a subplot. Next briefing. Rob identifies Pigma's new location, the asteroid belt. Well, what can I say? It's a good hiding spot. Alright, hopefully the team will be able to stop him this time. Otherwise I'm docking points. And immediately I have to interrupt myself. What the heck? The Starwolfen ships, they're implying they died. Yikes. They were not. They will return later, but think about it. The writers tried to make you think they were murdered to increase tension. Also adding to the fear of Mission 5 is the atmosphere. Deep space, nothing but. And again, increasing tension is not automatically an A+ effort when you are trying to write a story, because you also need, to earn that A+, you need build-up and payoff. Well, what awaits Fox and Company at the end of the mission? Wait. A bit of a post-production here, fellas. I forgot something really cool. So the prototype robot from Mission 1, it actually returns with not only a finished design, but it's actually like, it's actually more powerful because it's enhanced by the Aperoid. So not only is that like a nice callback to Mission 1, but you know, it directly continues what Falco was saying at the end of Mission 4 about the Aperoids being able to take over machinery and how, you know, that's terrifying and all that jazz. So yeah, it's really neat to see the developers do that. Back to the script. Well, what awaits Fox and Company at the end of the mission?
Pigma's ship?
Fox!
Pigma!
Incredible!
What is that thing?
Do not resist, you have been warned.
Looks like Pigma's already gone. Who or what are you?
We will answer. We are the ultimate existence. You cannot resist us. You will join us.
Oh my god! I don't know what to say other than that this is insanity. The Aperoids consumed Pigma and turned him into a monstrosity. It's terrifying to hear such a disgusting, distorted voice telling you that they are the ultimate existence. With the core memory retrieved, everyone enters the Great Fox to speak with General Pepper. He once again warns of the behavior that they have studied regarding the Aparoids, and he announces that it is finally time to travel to their homeworld.
As long as the Queen exists, the Aparoids will continue to multiply.
Understood. We're on our way.
Fox. I'm sensing a distress call from planet Sauria.
Sauria? From Tricky?
I'm not sure, but I sense cries of agony.
Oh no. The plot was almost perfect up until now. In efforts to make Star Fox Adventures feel more in line with the Star Fox series, Namco decided to have Team Star Fox travel back to planet Sauria and defend it from the Aparoid control. That's all well and good, and I commend the developers for wanting to give Adventures more of a direct link to the series, but this was probably the worst possible way that could have been done. You must defeat the Aparoid Queen. Understood, General. Wait, distress signal from Sauria. I'm not going to spend any more time on this cutscene. It's a dumb, stupid contrivance, and it comes out of nowhere. And now as I attempt to get over that for a bit, we are introduced to the Aparoid Hatchers, which produce and or multiply other Aparoids in quick succession. These are just like the spawners from the Sargasso station, but rather than producing robots, we have more dangerous creations here. Falco and Slippy defend the skies, while Crystal and Fox take out the Hatchers on foot. Gosh, I love the mixing up of the roles in this game. After a complete success, Fox and Crystal talk with Tricky, a character from Star Fox Adventures. Man, Fox's voice actor just nails this scene. Take a look.
I'll take care of things here, so you two can come back on your honeymoon.
What are you, nuts? We're not yet,
Not yet?
I mean, this isn't a conversation for children.
You said you weren't gonna treat me like a kid anymore.
Then stop acting like one.
I really enjoy the dialogue here, and if this wasn't made evident by myself before, I apologize, but Crystal and Fox continue to have romantic feelings for one another following Star Fox Adventures. Assault keeps this interaction on the low side, but I think it does help flesh out these two, even if it's only a little bit. We are just over the halfway point of Assault's plot, so I think it would be appropriate to analyze the characters themselves before we continue. Although, I've already discussed Andrew Oikeni and some of the others in detail, so please keep that in mind. Characters like Beltino, Wolf, and Leon are all interesting in their own ways, but unless I discuss them now, then that means that they're not worthy of further analysis. Fox is excellent. He's very smart, has a sense of humor, can be a bit awkward, very caring, courageous, and... did I just list 5 traits about him? And that's just scratching the surface here, folks. Fox McCloud is a 3-dimensional character in Assault. He's constantly reacting to the events with new things to add to what's going on. He's not repetitive, nor is he a simple fellow. I refuse to believe that Fox McCloud is more fleshed out in any other Star Fox game. His chemistry with the cast is pretty solid and varied as well. Fox is particularly interested in talking to Crystal and flirting with her, views Falco as a strong fighter and pilot, has more respect for Slippy than the others, and treats Peppy and General Pepper with utmost respect, of course. And need I mention how Fox gives Wolf quite a lot of respect as well, wondering if perhaps Wolf could do a lot of good if he had the right mindset. And then there's Falco Lombardi. Cocky and stubborn, but always entertaining. He cannot stand Slippy and proceeds to mock him or make fun of him because of it. Falco believes he has proven himself as an excellent pilot, and while he's no perfectionist, he thinks he's incredible at what he does. But let me make clear, Falco never goes too far in this regard to make him unlikable. Falco has a decent amount of respect for Fox, dislikes Slippy, and is mostly indifferent to Crystal, but defends her from the likes of Starwolf and shuts up Panther whenever possible. And of course, Falco sees Peppy and General Pepper as important leaders deserving of respect. Even still, he is not afraid to criticize one of the team members for struggle or failure to deliver in battle. Falco is just such an entertaining character. I'm not even sure how else to say it. It's crucial that every team has someone confident in themselves, and the humor provided by Falco is especially needed considering how bleak the story is. Moving on, Slippy Toad, the mechanic and a pilot for the team. I always root for Slippy because he's the underdog of the group. He gets along well with his dad, which I note because Slippy and Beltino are the only instance of family working together in the Star Fox franchise. This makes me wonder what it would be like to have Fox and James work together. Well, when both are alive at the same time. Slippy has many great lines, just like Falco. In fact, a particular line actually became a long-running joke among Star Fox players. Mission 3, No Mercy.
No mercy!
Cool.
Slippy's amateur piloting can be seen as either fake tension for the player, or as one big underlying joke. I tend to prefer thinking the latter is true, but your mileage may vary. Slippy has great respect for everyone in the team as well as both leaders, but I wonder if he truly has respect for Falco or not. It's kind of hard to tell, but once again, I'll pick a side. I'll say Slippy has little respect for Falco because he's a big bad bully to him, but again, your mileage may vary. And that brings up an important point. As much as Star Fox Assault does to flesh out the famous cast and improve the dialogue, there's still a lot of unexplored traits and configurations with relationships in the cast. But regardless, Assault more than satisfies in these departments. Next up is Crystal Vixen. I discussed her role at the beginning of the story analysis, however her personality was left on the cutting room floor. Well, Crystal is a fairly well-made character, but I think she's not on the same level of quality as Fox, Falco, Slippy, or Peppy. At least not in this particular Star Fox game. With that said, Crystal has telepathic powers in addition to the standard abilities of the pilots. She takes responsibility seriously and often gets emotional when the battle seems to have been lost, and by that I mean she reacts the most to new occurrences. I find her to be quite likable despite her not being such a fantastic character, as I think she's most enjoyable as a side character to the other pilots, if you will, so that her dialogue stands out. Crystal has a particular attachment to Fox, of course, and as for the rest of the cast, she seems to have a pretty even amount of respect for them all. And that's exactly the problem with Crystal. Don't get me wrong, the fact that Crystal prefers to keep quiet and gives out equal respect to her colleagues are great traits to have. But the lack of variation leaves her feeling a little underwhelming and, dare I say, less interesting overall. Unfortunately, being all that kind and reserved made her a little less interesting. I guess this isn't a grave issue, but I digress. I discussed Peppy earlier, but I have to add a couple more points. There's not much in the way of analyzing Peppy moment to moment, but he'll become very important in the plot soon enough. So instead of analyzing him here, I'll just supply a few observations. Peppy treats the cast the same across the board, but there's hints of proudness when Fox achieves something, which is expected if you played Star Fox 64. But unlike Crystal, Peppy has something great to fall back on. Now that he's a retired pilot, he takes a criminally important role as an advisor and overseer. Next on the roster, to give a greater inspection, is General Pepper. And yeah, there's not much else to say above surface level, but like Peppy, he'll become interesting soon enough. Ladies and gentlemen, what would a Star Fox game be without dialogue between the cast during missions? The dialogue during missions in Star Fox Assault is fairly well balanced, in not being obnoxious, but still present enough to leave an impression once the player turns off the console. Camaraderie is a very prevalent theme during the campaign of Star Fox Assault, but bickering between the pilots is here and accounted for as well. In Star Fox 64, the dialogue was certainly entertaining, but the writing and the voice actors in Assault are so much better. And all of this allows me to take the story more seriously, which makes the occasional insult thrown to a team member even more of a surprise. I may focus more on critiquing the story and the plot of Star Fox Assault, but I cannot praise the dialogue during gameplay enough. Whether it's a small detail to add to the understanding of a minor character such as Leon, for example, or someone supplying a nice one-liner, the fact that these characters hold my attention as much as they do only serves to heighten the gameplay experience. And onward we go. Next briefing. So this is where it gets real. While the team was on planet Sauria, planet Corneria got attacked. Now that's heartbreaking to say the least, but General Pepper makes it out to be worse than first expected. Most of the Cornerian army was murdered, and the city is in almost a state of ruin. Adding on to this, the Aperoids are using radar jamming technology that cannot be deciphered. The research team had to put their hands up in the air on this one. Seriously, nobody could figure it out. Then the transmission goes out, with General Pepper seeming to be becoming ill. Good lord! And if that wasn't enough, Fox puts on his ultra-serious face and says to Falco that he must destroy the radar jammers if he dies trying. It must be said that the plot supports the gameplay in the feeling of a struggle to survive, heightened by the ground gameplay. Destroy some radar jammers. I don't know about you, but I don't think that's going to change the tide of the war, now would it? And the truth is, no it won't! The way that some of these missions use their objectives as a way of showing how desperate and bleak the fight truly is, this shows that the developers understood strong ludonarrative synchronicity. What that means is that Star Fox Assault has mission objectives that directly coincide with the atmosphere of the story it presents. After the jammers are destroyed, Peppy directs Fox to an Arwing, but it gets blown up right in his face. As soon as this happens, Fox gets swarmed. Thankfully, Wolf appears to blast them to smithereens, but not without nearly killing Fox in the process. Oh my god! I mean, seriously, how many times do I have to say, good lord, and oh my god in this video? Fox is completely shocked to have been saved by Wolf, and what's more is that Leon and Panther appear as well. What ensues is the classic temporary truce between the rivals. Leon and Panther, I am assuming, are taking out other threats, while Fox rides on top of Wolf's ship, as Wolf flies around Cornerian City. I should be clear, this truce between Fox and Wolf is nothing special, and has no depth to it at all, but it is kind of nice to see them work together, mainly for Fox's reaction, because it appears as if he's completely okay with Wolf working with him, but Fox might be wondering if this is all a ploy of some kind. It's things like this that really get myself thinking. I have to discuss General Pepper's pose in that ship. He looks dead and poses as if he's in a casket. He genuinely appears dead. He's lying cold. He's motionless as the ship continues to act without his consent. I feel uncomfortable talking about that, so we're just gonna move on. He then does something outrageous. He not only asks Fox, but he begs him to be killed. Not only does this increase the tension of the narrative a billion-fold, but further develops the dignity of General Pepper. The last thing he wants is for this alien scum to take over the universe, and because of that, he has no qualms with sacrificing himself. Fox resists, as you would imagine, but Wolf tells him that this is the right thing to do. What precedes is a brief boss fight. Hear the suffering of General Pepper.
Let me die in battle! Do not let me transform! Honor! Let me keep my honor once!
I don't even know where to begin to describe this next plot point.
General Pepper! Peppy!
General, are you all right?
Is that you, Peppy? What have you done?
Looks like I'll never make retirement now.
Unbelievable! Peppy hopped inside an Arwing and attempted to save General Pepper. Watch how dangerous that maneuver is. It makes me wince every time. The good news is that General Pepper and Peppy are both safe. Peppy seems to have received an injury, but is alive at the least. Back to the writing of the scene, I think the timing of this was perfect. With only a few missions left in the game, the most valued figure in the cast is Corrupted. Once again, I am happy to see that the writers took a crescendo approach to building up the threat of the Aperoids. Seeing them get stronger and cause more damage is rather engaging from the player's perspective, and it increases stress on player performance. It's just hard for me to believe that the developers were willing to go as far as this to prove a point about the enemy forces and the tone of the plot. But beyond that, it's impressive and well executed. Now, let's say that General Pepper died. I think it would have only supported what the narrative was trying to deliver on, but I can accept his survival because, well, the plot has yet to pull this move twice, and also, his survival increased Peppy's development in a way. Fox has some final remarks with Wolf, with the wise sage giving some advice to Fox before he departs. And now, the next briefing. Beltino returns with successful research. Finally, something positive! The location of the Aperoid homeworld has been pinpointed, but he tells Fox that he is not permitted to go there just yet. Slippy pushes back a bit, but at the end of the day, orders are orders. The research team develops something incredible. The Aperoids can be destroyed with the triggering of their own self-destructive system, and it's likely that this notion came about thanks to the research on the core memory that Fox found earlier. What exactly is Beltino talking about? Apoptosis. I'll let that one slide. Maybe. Beltino will finalize the program containing apoptosis, and it's up to the team to fire it at the Aperoid Queen, and that's what will trigger all Aperoids to self-destruct. Well, how does this plot point fare then? Pretty well, I must say. Though I believe the naming of the Achilles heel for the Aperoids could have been a lot better, even though that's a nitpick. Rob interrupts to warn everyone that the Orbital Gate, a defense platform, is being attacked by a swarm of Aperoids. An excuse to have another mission, I suppose. However, what actually saves this is the word choice provided by Beltino. He said, "I'm making a program." The program is not ready for use, so defending a key station of defense while Beltino and the researchers work on a solution is not exactly what I'd call a waste of time. However, I completely understand if some players feel this was unnecessary. After a successful performance of defense, Beltino finishes the program and hands it off to the team. With that said, an extremely neat-looking wormhole is created, and the team presses on. Something's off. Crystal notices how beautiful the home planet is, and is surprised. So is Falco. And Peppy scratches his head. Why is it that the size and the mass of the planet is disproportionate? Oh, I see. Finally, the source of the Aperoids is located, but a shield is protecting the entry point. The goal is to simply find and destroy all of the shield's generators. Fox is alone to do this, unfortunately, but that's because considering this is the homeworld of the Aperoids, Falco, Slippy, and Crystal will be more than occupied, I'm sure. Hatchers make an unfortunate return, but the mission was accomplished. And after such a struggle, the shield closes again. This is all up to assumption, but the player must be feeling that something's about to happen. And rightfully so.
Dang it!
Out of the way, everybody!
Peppy?
Extreme impairment. Main hull will not survive more damage.
Who cares? Divert all energy to the main guns! Fire!
Damage capacity exceeded.
Too bad. We're going out in style.
Peppy, you can't die!
Back off, all of you!
Peppy, you mustn't.
Yes, this is my duty. And now you must fulfill your duty as well, Fox.
Peppy! Don't do it, Peppy!
What are you doing, crazy old fool?
I must give praise to just how emotional this scene is, and how surprising it is as well. Peppy was prepared to go down with the ship. Already infused with those aperoids on the outside, he was ready to die. This speaks volumes about his character, and I give him my absolute gratitude as I did for General Pepper. However, there's an issue with this plot point. But please don't misunderstand me, I love this plot point. It nearly brings me to tears, honestly, but we must critique it, because it does have an issue. The problem with an attempted suicide or a sacrifice plotline is the loss of an iconic character in a small cast of characters. Peppy fills this role perfectly, so I understand why the writers didn't go through with it, but they sure as heck could have made his survival more believable. Now, you may have noticed I alluded to this when I discussed what was almost the death of General Pepper, and I gave Assault the opportunity to save his life as long as it didn't occur again to weaken the overarching plot. And pulling a similar stunt here, yeah, it's not as impressive as it could have been. However, on the contrary, it could be argued with an in-game explanation that it was simply a happenstance as to how Peppy survived. And yes, I realize I haven't officially revealed that Peppy lives after the team heads down into the aperoid tunnel, but it would have been less cohesive if I waited to bring it up later. And even if Peppy's survival brings down this event just a tad, it certainly was emotional in the moment. And to think that he truly died, it's hard to deal with. Overall, Peppy's sacrifice kind of evens out for me. There are victories with it, and then there are issues from the plot point. But you know what? There's more to love than there is to hate. Okay, I know all of you are excited to see a critique of the very end of the story, but I have to halt. Again, I try to be as honest as possible. There's a terrible plot point that immediately follows the scene with Peppy. Yeah, I'm not making this up. It's terrible! Jumping the gun a bit here, I find there to be only two somewhat significant issues with Assault's plot. There's the contrivance with the rush to planet Sauria, and now there's what I deem the backdoor contrivance. And before you scratch your head, Assault is not alone on this. Just one example lies in Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves, where at the very end— wait, I won't spoil the end of a game I'm not reviewing. Just take my word for it, Assault is not alone on the backdoor contrivance, and it's not only telling of poor oversight in the writing department, but it's truly infuriating on a personal level. As neat as it is to have them join Team Star Fox for the finale, Wolf, Leah, and Panther somehow got into the aperoid tunnel and follow you. The shield closed, remember? So explain to me how these three got here. Where is the back door? I suppose you could somehow, possibly, explain this, but somehow finding a back door to the aperoid tunnel, a place so difficult to enter that it takes crashing a ship with the massive Pluto to open a temporary way through, is ridiculous. I don't know which contrivance is worse, this or Planet Sauria. Maybe this. Moving along to what we've all been craving for, everyone confronts the Aperoid Queen. It's quite the disturbing encounter, hammering in the tone of Assault one last time.
That must be...
the Queen.
Fox.
Huh?
Fox, don't be a fool. Stop all this nonsense.
Pigma? You swine, but you're supposed to be dead.
Star Fox team, accept defeat.
General Pepper?
Give in. This is not sacrifice. It is evolution.
Not Peppy, too! Stop!
What's going on?
Fox. Dad? That's enough. There's no need for you to be hurt anymore. Let us live as one.
Fox, don't let it fool you. You know your father is... I know! My father would never tell me to give up!
Wow, I can't even express just how thrilling this battle is. The fight itself isn't mechanically strong, but the design of the room, intense piece of music, and incredible sense of teamwork between the pilots makes this fight unparalleled in the series. Well, at least for story reasons. And after firing the program at the defeated Queen, the day is saved. Seriously, people, Have you no faith in this plot? You thought it ended here, didn't you? Or maybe not, I can't tell. The Aperoid Queen spouts creepy dialogue about domination as expected, and the team pursues her into the depths of the planet with hopes of preventing an antibody from being created. After the defeat, the program starts to work. Fox says one of the most badass lines I've ever heard.
She tried to bypass evolution by stealing souls, but you have to be born with one.
And I love to highlight how during the cutscenes, a damage level ranked by letter grade is provided for each mission. I love it mainly for how it shows how the Cornerian attack was the low point of the war, and how the damage being dished out was reversed on the Aperoid homeworld. Star Fox Assault's story had everything it needed, really. The only thing I can think of beyond the two somewhat substantial contrivances was that the game never had a decent amount of levity. Once again, Assault delivered despite my expectations. In the post-credit scene, Crystal reminds the team of all the casualties, and even though they couldn't save everyone, they at least had one survivor who's providing the levity I think the plot needs. Peppy shows up alive and well. I think what really makes this moment special, and so positive, is Slippy's excitement and how Peppy makes another joke about retirement. Plus, Fox knew that Peppy was alive. It's not explained as to how, but there's enough lingering tales to catch on to, so I won't complain. And that is the end of Star Fox Assault's plot. If it wasn't clear enough through the critique and the analysis of the plot, this game is a home run for a story. Assault's story is not particularly complicated, but it's filled with quite a lot of depth, but beyond all else, it manages to give the events that happen in the series some credibility in its tone. Assault's story is also inclusive of story elements that would help develop the behaviors and morals of a pre-teenager in my eyes, and I don't think I need to explain that further. The crux of that argument is in the praise of the tone and the stakes. With that said, the greatest of all the great things in this plot, well, it comes down to three things: the amazing pacing, the character interaction, and the interesting take on war. There's not much room for removing elements of the plot, and while I could see it feeling repetitive near the end, I personally don't believe that's the case. Star Fox Assault has a campaign with the length of only 3 hours, and I'm thrilled to see that the pacing of the plot wasn't too quick to compensate. And back on the point of character interaction, what an incredible cast of writers and voice actors. Seriously! By 2005, many franchises in the gaming medium have adopted more cinematic or more involved stories, so once again, Assault isn't very original here. But what matters is the execution. These characters have such interesting relationships with one another. Assault's story turned Fox and Peppy into three-dimensional characters, as well as further enhancing Falco, Slippy, Crystal, General Pepper, Wolf, and so on. Perhaps the stigma of Star Fox 64's cheesy dialogue loomed over into player impressions of Assault, but I believe this is without a doubt a new standard for plot and character interaction in the Star Fox series. And I can't forget, the story also benefits from the stakes and drama that come with the war itself, and I believe that while this is by no means a unique template for a story, Assault certainly took an interesting approach, to which I believe the approach has been analyzed already. The plot. It's a great one. And even if you somehow don't buy the last however many minutes of this review I spent on it, this is the worst way you could describe the plot. The worst thing you could categorize the plot of Star Fox Assault is a good space opera. That's the meanest way I could put it. Seriously, just Google space opera. A novel, movie, or television program set in outer space, typically of simplistic and melodramatic nature. A good version of that is the worst way to describe the story. Any worse description given, all I have to say is, I want evidence. Phew, that took a lot out of me, folks. Star Fox Assault's plot is quite a lot deeper than expected, at least on my behalf. It has some issues, but overall it's fantastic. Star Fox Assault plays as an arcade-like shooter in two different gameplay styles. One has you piloting an Arwing, and the other is placed on foot or in a Landmaster. Assault begins with a familiar and easier gameplay style to get to grips with. The player can enjoy cruising around in the Arwing, and while they may not understand all of the complex maneuvers by the end of the first level, they should understand the basics. This is helped by the fact that the Arwing levels are on rails, so the player is always getting closer to the end automatically before any input required. This should be self-explanatory, even if it is insightful, which is fine and all, but you'll see why this is an important notion. Here's level 2. Are you kidding me? Dropping the player in a completely new gameplay style, just like that. As I alluded to in my Star Fox editorial, the whiplash in gameplay styles here is of failure. So I would suggest slowly introducing new gameplay mechanics. This is one aspect of Assault that fails miserably. The game starts out with a completely on-rails level, familiar Arwing gameplay, but then immediately dumps you on foot for the next mission with no heads up. This must have alienated hundreds of Star Fox fans at one time, and it's hard to deny how stupid of a decision that was. With all that said, this is not a criticism worthy of any more explanation, but the poor transition between implementing gameplay styles isn't done in a sloppy way, but a very amateur one. I'd expect this kind of transition from a college project, not an official product. Anyways, even if the transition between gameplay styles can be, I guess, a little tasteless at times, it's more important to critique the styles themselves. The Arwing gameplay. Absolutely incredible. Steering the ship feels smooth, and the controls are equally smooth in how easy it is to maneuver. The gameplay in Star Fox Assault is best critiqued in a mission-by-mission style of review, but a lot can be examined on a general basis here. So let's continue. In addition to the on-rails sections using the Arwing, returning from Star Fox 64 are the all-range mode sections. And what are they? Well, they allow you to move in full 3D space. These are mostly unchanged in their transition to Assault, but one key change is how the reticle actually locks on for standard shots in all-range mode. I can understand why, considering how vast some of these areas are and how small some of the enemies are, but I don't think this change is of great importance, since it doesn't either improve the game, nor does it take away from it. Even still, accurate aiming, whether on rails or in all-range mode, is crucial for victory. Star Fox has always been grounded in the trust of the player's abilities to both shoot with solid aiming and dodge with solid reaction time. Thankfully, the Arwing gameplay in Assault escalates in difficulty very smoothly throughout the course of the game. You'd hope to find this in every game, but remember, Assault has another gameplay style, so the fact that the Arwing gameplay has its own difficulty path is quite impressive. Back in my critique of Sonic Adventure DX, I claimed that the multiple gameplay styles offered more positives than negatives to the overall experience, but there were some notable problems in that game because of that approach. Star Fox Assault, whether it be the 2 gameplay styles instead of the intimidating 6 from Sonic Adventure, or something else entirely, manages to avoid problems of the structure with multiple gameplay styles. And usually the problem with these multiple styles is an imbalanced difficulty. That is somehow completely avoided here. I was somewhat expecting of issues being caused by the multiple gameplay styles, but after studying the game and playing it 7 times for this review, I found none. I don't have anything. Oh, there is a key issue with the game's difficulty after all, but it has nothing to do with the multiple gameplay styles. Interestingly enough, Star Fox Assault actually contains 3 difficulty settings to choose from, categorized from easiest to most difficult as Bronze, Silver, and Gold. I'd say a normal playthrough should be played on Silver. You still have to try, but you're not going to get your butt kicked either. However, there is a huge catch that applies to all difficulty levels. Dying during the on-foot missions is disastrous. Any progress you made towards your objective is casted aside, which means you have to start the entire mission again. Why? Do you have any idea how frustrating this is on the Gold difficulty? Back on track with the Arwing gameplay, it cannot be underestimated how well scripted the level design is for the on-rail sections. The moment-to-moment process of shooting down as many enemies as possible is invigorating. Plus, there was never a moment where the camera got stuck on a piece of geometry, nor did I have any issues with depth perception in any of my playthroughs. Once again, this might be expected, but perhaps this is taken for granted in Assault. I played Star Fox 64 equally as much and found numerous moments of the camera getting stuck on something or not having the best view of the area. What happened as a result of this? Crashing into things when it wasn't my fault. Thank God Assault has none of these issues. The pacing of the on-rail sections is top-notch as well. You'll never be bored of the same set piece repeating itself constantly, not even in the asteroid belt level. Moving on, the all-range sections deserve some praise as well, but the design is not as grand, is the way I would put it. The freedom to maneuver yourself wherever you'd like is fantastic and opens up new possibilities for the developer to challenge the player, but rarely does this ever occur. Perhaps that means that the all-range sections aren't ambitious, but the quality's still high regardless. How can that be? Alright, I'll ask you. How are the on-rail sections well designed? Solid pacing, clear visual design, and satisfying shooting action. All of this carries over into the all-range sections, which is why I can comfortably praise these sections as well, even if they're not as ambitious. I could only imagine the possibilities here, but what's important is looking at what we got. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to explore is the crux of why the Arwing gameplay is well designed in a general sense. The pure satisfaction of blowing stuff up. It's not entirely subjective for me to say this either. With the weight of the intense story on your shoulders, there has to be motivation in the player to want to destroy the Aperoid menace. Doing so is through shooting lasers and bombs at high speeds and through intense set pieces. So I can praise the on-rail sections all day long, but the experience from person to person is unchanged for the most part. This is not a problem in the slightest, folks, but Assault has a both linear and somewhat non-linear ecosystem within its gameplay. I say this because the ground gameplay can offer unique experiences from person to person, which is a plus in my eyes. What's even better is that the ground segments truly embody the depressing atmosphere of the plot. By that, I mean that the pressure set on by the time limits, vast size of maps, and damage that your comrades receive are dramatically heightened in the ground segments. I already analyzed the struggle Team Star Fox endures to fight the Aperoids, but there are many times during gameplay where you, the player, will feel the struggle. In fact, I'd describe Assault's gameplay at its most hectic moments to be very similar to Day 3 of Majora's Mask. In that game, the third day marked the ending hours of your time alive, and so a lot of players would agree that it was difficult to get through all of those tasks before the moon comes crashing down. With that comparison made, these are non-exaggerated examples from my personal playthroughs of Star Fox Assault. This is how I truly imagine a player would feel in these instances. Oh! Retreat! Retreat! Oh god, we're done for. We're never gonna win. So, what exactly are the ground missions? You might be asking that question. Fox is able to move around in 360 degrees as he explores an area containing bases, hallways, and everything in between. The ground missions are very similar to the likes of Star Wars Battlefront 2, and while it may be fun to delve into that comparison, it's not relevant to this video. Anyways, Fox will be given different tasks when on foot, contrasting how the Arwing missions always have the same goal at the end. While the tasks may vary, the player will continually have to shoot down a number of, well, whatever it is, it depends on the mission. Thankfully, progress of the mission is well documented on screen. It's always in the bottom right-hand corner. Speaking of the interface, the player has a decent variety of ways to keep track of where they are in the area. Considering that Fox is controlled from a third-person perspective, and that depending on the control scheme you are likely unable to change the camera much at all, and that a lot of the areas have the same general appearance throughout, okay, so there are a lot of potential issues here. But the point I was going to make was that the variety in maps help mitigate these three issues. One of the maps is translucent, but it takes up the entire screen. However, the player has a radar that is usable on foot or in an Arwing. This is truly all the player needs to take out the desired amount of targets, and this indeed mitigates those three issues I mentioned earlier. Everything I have been saying about the design behind the on-foot missions has been secretly applying to the Landmaster as well, even though you technically are no longer on foot. The Landmaster is a tank that can be used to satisfyingly destroy everything in your path. It controls very stiffly with a limited range of movement, which is expected for a tank. However, as realistic as these limitations may be, they shouldn't hamper my enjoyment of the game. Thankfully, I never found it frustrating to maneuver the Landmaster, aside from occasional moments in the Ficina mission due to some areas being inaccessible for the tank, which made me have to turn awkwardly sometimes. There's not much I can say about the Landmaster in terms of quality. It's an alright addition, but Star Fox Assault isn't winning any points for it. However, I will say that the ability to run over smaller aperoids with the boost, or use the hover pack to gain height, it does add some depth to the gameplay. The best of Assault's gameplay has yet to come, people. A lot of the missions not only allow the player to switch between the Arwing, Landmaster, and on foot at will, but the missions themselves are designed to encourage usage of more than one tactic to succeed. And I will prove this in the mission-by-mission critique. But for now, I should briefly mention optional abilities that can be performed. Arwing boarding, strafing with the second control scheme, and dodging are all minor mechanics that work well for what they are. And that's about it for those. The controls for the on-foot segments have seen immense criticism from critics and fans alike since the game released in 2005. Many have often said that these controls ruined the entire gameplay experience. And this explains why many of them do not think the on-foot missions are good, nor do they have much fun with them. Well, folks, the results are in. But first, the mechanics behind the controls. The player is granted the option to choose from 3 control schemes that can be toggled at any time in the main menu. Pick one of these control schemes and stick with it. The first option, the default one, is better suited to Arwing gameplay, but the second is better suited to land missions. Don't even bother with the third one. Just don't. Why am I telling you to pick one and stick with it? I'm telling you because the only place the player can change their desired control scheme is the main menu. It's an ignominious inconvenience. I am docking off a couple points for the inconvenience, but most importantly, I realize that nobody wants to quit the campaign to change controls every mission or so, which is why I recommend you choose option number 1 and adjust to the clunkiness on foot. Uh-oh. Yeah, I think you realized I revealed something pretty upsetting. I guess it's true. The results are in, and the controls on foot are somewhat of an issue. The controls are sloppy, and the game doesn't have any features that can improve this. Yes, even the second control scheme that I described earlier, while being more geared towards the ground gameplay, it's still sloppy and a little slippery. The critics and fans were right. Except they were wrong. Alright, let's dive into the meat of the gameplay, and you'll see why the critics and fans have been wrong. On foot, Fox has a decent amount of weapons at his disposal, many of which can be temporarily obtained during a mission. You'll always start with a blaster that is a terrible standard shot, but actually has a really good charge shot. From there, you can get grenades, which don't have much use, or you could find a rocket launcher and decimate everything in your path. And all that is true, some of these weapons are pretty lame in effectiveness, but other ones are actually really good. The best combination of weapons comes from the default blaster's charge shots and the machine gun's quick fire rate. But what about the quality of the shooting in Star Fox Assault? I need to draw a line in the sand and decide if the control of the reticle when shooting at something is precise enough to allow the player to succeed and exceed. But let's be honest, the shots in Assault are never, ever accurate. They are precise. Minus one exception I'll get to in a minute. Many often confuse the terms accurate and precise. But what matters is that despite potential feelings of a loose grasp on Fox, flapping about on the ground, the reticle is always precise. A highly respected definition of precision in the community of sciences is the ability to achieve the same results with every trial. Accuracy is then defined as achieving a result close to that of the actual score, with precision being a key factor of how the reticle works on the ground. It is completely fair to expect the player to get accustomed to the design of the somewhat sloppy character movement on foot with the first control scheme option. And now for the exception. The sniper rifle can only be used in a perspective granted by the scope itself, meaning that using the sniper rifle is both precise and accurate. In simple terms, if you miss with this game's sniper rifle, it's a you problem. You can complain all you want about that, but I have the high ground.
Shut up. Get out.
See, despite Fox's somewhat sloppy control, the reticle is always on point, which is why I believe that player adjustment is acceptable in this case. But that's just my take on the matter. And now to critique the missions themselves, along with all the bosses along the way. The first mission is actually one of the best in terms of design, surprisingly. The mission is associated with planet Fortuna, but before Fox and company head there, we're treated to, dare I say, a classic space battle. That's right, the entire mission revolves around the Arwing. Destroying Oikone's fleets is especially satisfying considering the sheer size of them. But the best part is on Fortuna, and without a doubt, this level is one of the most refined in Star Fox history. There's a perfect amount of speed, set pieces, free movement, and more. It's also worth mentioning how the stage increases its difficulty with the sheer number of tank enemies near the end. I think the Fortuna section of the first mission is the standard for how to make a good Star Fox level, and I'm considering using it for future Star Fox reviews as a level of comparison. As we all know by now, Fox has to defeat Andrew Oikone at the end of the first mission. The fight plays similarly to that of the Andross boss fight in Star Fox 64, with the requirement of dealing damage to the palms of his hands. It's quite mediocre, despite the surprisingly high damage output of Oikone's attacks. But why take off points when the real battle has yet to begin? Unfortunately for the Aparoid, while the attacks are more complicated, the sheer repetition of the boss cycle is irritating. The player's opportunity to attack the Aparoid is very minuscule as well. Moving on to the branching paths of Star Fox Assault. Never mind. If it wasn't clear before, Star Fox Assault has a linear-based progression in contrast to the previous Star Fox games, and because of that, I made a bad assumption. Yeah, see, I was just making sure everyone was paying attention, that's all. I'm taking points off myself. The second mission is on Planet Katina, a mission comprised of on-foot segments with the Landmaster thrown in. The targets are spread out with good care, meaning that the player will have to explore most of the level in order to find them all. The enemy's range and defense as well as attack abilities, but on the whole it's fairly easy to get through. The Landmaster can be used to blow up these large barriers, and Fox himself can go inside the base with an elevator to find one of the targets. It's time for a long, overdue comeback of a term I coined on linear level design back in my countdown top 15 3D Zelda dungeons. Let's just take a quick look at what I said back in June of 2016. One thing to note is that this temple isn't filled with as many puzzles as other Zelda dungeons. It's more focused on what I like to call paced exploration, where you aren't free to roam around, but if you do what the game requires to progress, you'll inch your way throughout the area. To explain this in new words, paced exploration occurs when the player is given an environment to explore, but is led to discover or accomplish goals through smart linear design, sometimes without the player even knowing. This can be applied to all of the on-foot missions, with the radar system leading the players to explore a somewhat linear path. Paced exploration. It's as if the developers are holding you up with puppet strings, leading you to the only ways of progression, but the environment is designed so that you feel like the choice of progression was entirely of your own. I simply believe this is a solid choice of level design for many games. In terms of aesthetics, the base on Katina has a very dirty and worn down kind of feel to it, thanks to the prevalent dirt and burning parts of the buildings. As fitting as it would be for the base to look desolate to match the game's story, I wouldn't go that far, but it has the run-down look for sure. The boss of the mission is a Kaz-Hirai nightmare. It's literally a giant enemy crab. Sadly, it's way too simple to be remarkable in any sense of the imagination, and it's a little awkward to get on top of it with the Landmaster. Overall, the second mission is really solid, I would say. Third mission at the Sargasso Space Station. It's a solid mission, but not quite as good as the previous two. The space station's layout is quite confusing, despite my defense of the excellent radar system. The walls and floors have similar textures to one another, making this mission not as fun to complete as it could have been. Getting lost is fairly easy to do here if you're a first-time player, and doing so will hurt your enjoyment of the level. How much? Well, that'll vary between people. As for some positivity, there's still plenty of demonstrations to show how the developers understood good game design, even if the map itself wasn't the greatest. The first rule when making a large area to explore with lots of verticality is that it's important to have multiple ways to get up, and thankfully the developers succeeded in realizing this. In addition to the many staircases the Sargasso station houses, elevators are also present. The corridors on the upper levels are a nice way of adding variety. Yet, I still really appreciate how wide and free the base floor is. I could see many people being upset that many parts of the map are unnecessary because of this. The Sargasso mission introduces a brand new game mechanic. In the top left of the screen is a meter that measures the amount of enemy forces in the level. More will spawn in over time, and if the meter gets full, it's game over. The reason for that is because if enough enemy forces arrive, the station will be taken over by them. To those who are not familiar with this mechanic, do not fear. This meter is not the same thing as a time limit. As long as you take out a decent number of enemies on your way to the targets, you should be just fine. Oh, and one more thing before we move on. These types of missions don't require a specific order of targets to be destroyed, which reinforces my earlier argument that the on-foot segments always vary in experience between playthroughs. Time for the next mission. I lied. There's still the boss battle with Starwolf. Now, some of you will be upset with this, but I actually don't have a lot to say about this one. I mean, I like that the fight is in all range mode, and I like that the player has plenty of room to work with. I also believe that the pilots have good AI and will try to get away from you after you attack them. Is the Starwolf fight of high quality? Yes and no. Everything about the fight is well designed, except for the fact that Wolf and his team have little health. If only their health bars were extended, but unfortunately they are just way too easy to defeat. The fourth mission on Ficina. The mission entails the necessary destruction of 3 shield generators, infiltration and combat inside the base, and a shooting section on Falco's Arwing. Obviously, due to the events in the plot, the weather on Ficina is foggy and filled with snowfall. While I understand that this is justified in the story, I feel that the first section of the mission is quite flawed because of this. To be blunt, the draw's distance is simply not good enough to know what's ahead of you. And the layout of the map houses a range and heights of mountainous terrain, so it's kinda hard to see the whole map wherever you're standing. All of this results in an unsatisfactory experience. Not a bad experience, but an unsatisfactory one. Now I have to be honest. The section you're seeing on screen, this type of gameplay style, I don't think it's all that great. However, let's start with the positives. It's neat to stand on the Arwing and shoot down everything you see because you have infinite ammo. Another positive comes in the form of the scenery, which speaks for itself. Now, tell me if you couldn't see this coming, but there's nothing complex or interesting about these sections at all. Nothing. Thankfully, the fourth mission ends well with a neat boss fight. You'll have to use the Arwing to align yourself with good timing to take out the boss. The sheer number of Aparoid beings scattered about wins some points for me, but that's more so with intimidation. Is this mission bad? No, it's not. There's nothing offensive or terribly designed. Thankfully, there's a great mission up ahead. The 5th mission in the Asteroid Belt. It's entirely traversed in an Arwing, and I can't get enough of how satisfying it is to take out these asteroids. Some may jump to the conclusion that this mission must lack aesthetic variety, but that is surprisingly not true. The player will go into a space station after evading the asteroids. My only complaint about this level is the lack of enemies. Don't get me wrong, they exist in the level, but I expected a bit more. The boss fight with Pigma is easily one of the best. A lot of his attacks require quick dodging, and he is very defensive. Thankfully, it's not easy to pelt him with lasers and call it a day. You're gonna have to do some waiting. The 6th mission on planet Sauria. This mission encompasses all gameplay styles. The objective is to take out the many targets on foot, either in a Landmaster or not. Some of the areas are connected with these tiny cave-like corridors that the Landmaster cannot fit into, so I appreciate the change of pace. Remember that gauge from the Sargasso mission? I mean, we didn't talk about that long ago, but yeah, it's back, and it works the exact same way. The enemies are all airborne, which means the player has to handle switching between gameplay styles in order to remain safe of losing the mission. It helps that in all of my playthroughs, I never ever felt overwhelmed by the gauge, but I always knew that I couldn't slack off either. Without a doubt, this is the best mission in the entire game. The only element left to prove this is the map itself. Sauria also has a lot of unneeded tiny areas the player can explore, just like Sargasso. But this map is much more conservative with vertical level design. The layout has a solid balance between having all areas accessible, but also not being too easy to just plow through. And I cannot forget the gorgeous sky and luscious greenery. Along with the ancient feel of the temples, well, it all creates a really enjoyable atmosphere. And funnily enough, there is no boss fight. The 7th mission on Corneria. The targets are the radar jammers high up in the sky, which can only be taken out with the sniper rifle. With that said, there's still plenty of enemies around that need to be destroyed, otherwise you're gonna get killed. The map of this mission is not the best, but it's not the worst either. Perhaps it's the attractiveness of how nice the city looks in places where it's not under attack, but I don't believe these long stretches of land are necessary. And yes, I would compare this map to Sargasso in that regard, but it's certainly not as random or as annoying as Ficina, for example. But back to my previous point. It may be the visuals doing the trick, but I don't mind walking around these large areas, even if there's nothing in them. Who knows? More importantly, the radar jammers are spaced out very well, requiring the player to be conscientious about the tall skyscrapers, and, well, they're gonna have to figure out if you have to stand here or here in order to shoot that jammer. The player will be constantly thinking of these things, and that's why I think it's good design. After the jammers are destroyed, we have another one of these sections, just as meh as the previous one. Good news! The boss fight is fairly well designed. General Pepper has a tell when he's about to charge at the Wolfen, so the player can shoot him and prevent him from charging. In addition, he sends missiles towards you in a couple different types, and the player can prevent those from hitting the Wolfen as well. I think General Pepper should have had maybe one more attack to make it interesting, but that's neither here nor there. The 8th mission at the Orbital Gate. That radar doesn't lie. There are tens of enemies flying around. However, the player must once again multitask, this time destroying all enemies in your way so that they can't destroy you. The area that the player can explore is quite massive, and the sense of scope is thrilling. None of the space is wasted thanks to the amount of enemies occupying the area, and there's some items that can be obtained by the gate itself. There isn't a lot of complexity to this mission, but the amount of fun I have taking out all of these enemies and blowing up the missiles is absurd! I think the 8th mission is a shining example of why simplicity is sometimes best. It just has the right amount of room to fly around, the right amount of combat, it feels so perfect. Also, the Orbital Gate is stunning to look at, and I can't move on without mentioning the Orbital Gate Assault stage in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U. While taking the best aspects of the mission, it also transforms what we saw in Star Fox Assault into gorgeous HD graphics. Seriously, what a great stage! The 9th mission on the Aparoid Homeworld. It's very similar to the Sauria mission, where all gameplay styles are represented. However, it has issues. The layout of the map is organized, but I find it a bit too big for its own good. Remember how the mission on Ficina was hard to navigate through because of the landscape and the draw distance? Well, we have similar issues in the Aparoid Homeworld. The paths between the buildings are linear, but it's hard to put the whole map into context, unless you fly in an R-Wing. The R-Wing section at the end is a blast. Only element that has left to be discussed is the Landmaster. The player will need it to destroy these orbs in order to head into the buildings, and it can be used to travel around the area. Enemies are in droves as you'd expect, and it does get overwhelming. The mission itself is also just not as fun as it should be. I think it's the map layout that rubs me the wrong way. Regardless, it's still a fine mission, and a very ambitious one at that. The purple colors, odd shapes for buildings, hexagons on the floor as you walk, it all screams alien to me. Flying around the Aparoid Homeworld reminds me a lot of flying in a Banshee in the Halo games, in some kind of Covenant map or something. Oh, and there's no boss fight for this mission. The 10th mission in the Aparoid Tunnel. Entirely explored in the R-Wing, the player will have to dodge ridiculous traps and watch for high damage output. You'll never guess. but there's a lot of enemies too. Now, the mission isn't too hard, but it's not too easy either, so no complaints from me. I think this mission's outstanding. It's a somewhat challenging final level that embodies the tension of the plot. It's the aesthetics that really deliver on that. The alien-like designs of the tunnel are abstract and very foreboding. Aside from that, there's not much to say. The Aperoid Queen is stationary, but does have some attacks up her sleeve. Too bad you won't be seeing much resistance, because this fight can be cheesed heavily. Just look at what I did. Thankfully, the fight is redeemed in the surprise second phase, and I couldn't ask for any better. The damage output is high, the queen moves quickly, dodging attacks is an important strategy for winning the fight, and beyond all else, you can't cheese the fight! So, that was it. That was it for the gameplay. That's what I have to say in terms of the review, critique, whatever you want to call it of the gameplay. Except, there is a multiplayer mode. Similarly to my critique of Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, I will be heavily glossing over the multiplayer due to the following reasons. Number 1, I have had very few opportunities to play with other people. And number 2, I'm running out of steam talking about the gameplay. The multiplayer consists of a standard third-person shooter fare, and lots of characters are playable. All of the vehicles are usable, and yeah. You know what though? It is actually really fun. I would suggest playing it. Anyways, Star Fox Assault from a gameplay and story perspective is excellent. But how about the presentation? How does that stack up? Well, it's quite interesting, people. The graphics and the art style meet expectations for a late GameCube title, and sometimes they even go beyond those expectations. I praise the art design of each area in the mission-by-mission critique, but keep in mind that I also believe Assault looks solid in all visual aspects. The frame rate is locked at 60 frames per second for the Arwing exclusive missions, that being only 3 out of 10, and the game is locked at 30 frames per second for any other variety of mission. Personally, I think Namco deserves a lot of credit for implementing 60 frames per second when they could, considering how uncommon it is in the game. They really went the extra mile with that. The cherries on top come from the fact that all briefings run in 60 frames per second, which not only look nice, but it actually helps the animation look better. Animations? Now that's what I call a transition. The cinematography is quite good, and the animations of the characters, I would say, is above average for the time. Sometimes the developers got a little lazy, like look at Wolf's mouth in this scene, it's not moving at all. There are definitely moments where animation is stilted, odd, or just missing altogether, but those moments are so few and far between. Hopefully they didn't cut corners on the soundtrack though. The Tokyo New City Orchestra performed most of the pieces, and the rest of the music is digitally composed. That's right, a professional orchestra performed these pieces. In 2005. This, I would argue, was somewhat groundbreaking for the time. The composers are Yoshi Arakawa and Yoshinoro Kawamoto, plus Koji Kondo for his original compositions in Star Fox 64 that were rearranged for Assault. If any individual out there doubted that Star Fox 64 had great compositions, despite the poor instrumentation, the arrangements in Assault are not drastically different from the original pieces. But the changes in instrumentation more than make up for this. In addition, you could say that the arrangements having brand new assignments for parts is worthy enough of a second round. With many more instruments at their disposal, the composers could truly improve these pieces, and they definitely did. Even still, I cannot ignore the new compositions exclusive to Assault. Whether old or new, Assault's soundtrack is, dare I say, one of the best in gaming history. Let's take a listen to some of these highlights. And honestly, I'd love to play the whole soundtrack for you, but I can't for time reasons, obviously. But please take a listen and enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to finish this. Star Fox Assault. If I had to describe the gameplay in a nutshell, I would say that the Arwing gameplay is satisfying and gratifying, while the gameplay on the ground is entertaining and very well embodies the struggle to survive. The story is so well paced, maybe excluding the filler that is the Saria mission, that I wouldn't dare add any missions to the story. To combat the short length, Nintendo and Namco should have created an additional single-player mode, ranging from 2 to 3 hours in length. This could have been done in the form of a mission mode, or something entirely new. I think Star Fox Zero showed that Star Fox games are very capable of having 5 to 6 hour campaigns. As someone who didn't grow up with this game, I really wasn't sure what experience I would be playing. And you know, I'm a big Star Fox fan, which makes me heavily invested into finding out whether Assault was bad, or okay, or good, or great. The truth of the matter is obvious by this point. This game is incredible. I saw footage of Assault and I heard discussion on the game for years. Many Countdown artists talked about it, many Star Fox fans talked about it, obviously, and many reviewers talked about it. It's astonishing for me to write this conclusion, and after thinking that I knew everything about Star Fox Assault, to come out completely shocked at the result? Don't get me wrong, I had far from negative opinions on the game up until now, but when I played it, when I actually played it, it blew me away. In fact, I can describe the game in just one word. Impressive. I'm impressed by the visuals, I'm impressed by the tone, I'm impressed by the gameplay innovations, I'm impressed by the soundtrack, and I'm even impressed by the multiplayer. Star Fox Assault is an enigma, I'll tell you. It doesn't matter how many times I play it, I'm still impressed by it in some way. I say this because many think of impressiveness as an emotion related to a first-time experience only. However, Star Fox Assault shatters my expectations every time. Is it a perfect game? Heck no! Far from it! Even though I've praised the game for a long time now, I also supplied what I believe to be true faults with Star Fox Assault. And beyond everything else, this game symbolizes a leap of faith. I certainly do not see what the critics were seeing back in 2005, with Star Fox Assault being a safe sequel to Star Fox 64. What a bunch of malarkey! Regardless, it's time for the game's placement on my recommendation system. Now, what is about to occur is somewhat separate from the review itself, so bear in mind that the review should have spoken for itself up until this point on the game's quality. The recommendation level given is more based on things like the price of the game, the availability of the game, and lastly, the quality. You can find copies of Assault for a great price, typically in the range of $15 to $25, so nobody has to break the bank to play this amazing game. And best of all, availability is looking favorable. As for a final verdict on the recommendation system, Star Fox Assault is certainly, without a doubt, an absolute necessity. Despite potential issues of accessibility with its short length, banking on replay value more than anything, and because arcade-like shooters are somewhat of an acquired taste, the game just barely reached my highest recommendation. Whether you are versed in games such as Star Fox or not, this is a game that you must buy and play. I'm not joking around here. Star Fox Assault deserves to be played by everyone. Go shoot up some Aperoids and enjoy the magnificent plot without me constantly yapping about it.
What's up, Peppy?
Thank you.